I was 6 the first time I had to carry him. He wasn't heavy, not yet. That would come later, when the weight of all his broken promises started stacking themselves on top of his body like extra bones. But that night he was just limp and wet, soaked through from the rain and from whatever was in that bottle clenched in his right hand, like it held the meaning of life. I remember his boots dragging across the living room rug, the way they left streaks of mud, like bruises on the pale green threads. I remember how the dog barked, but not out of fear, out of confusion, like even he didn't know if the man I was dragging was someone we should be afraid of or someone we should mourn. It wouldn't be the last. Mom had been gone for 2 years by then. Cancer, they told me. But I think she just got tired of waiting for him to come home sober. That night was the first time I whispered, "Please don't die." Step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. When they put him in cuffs, he cried out for me like a child. I didn't understand that step until I was 11. That was the year he got pulled over with me in the back seat. 3 sheets to the wind, and the car swerving like a drunk thought. The cop asked me if I felt safe. I said yes, because I thought it would make things better. I said yes because I didn't know there was another option. "Tell them, Rosie. Tell them I was just tired." I did. They believed me. He got out with a slap on the wrist and a court-ordered AA meeting schedule he pinned to the fridge like a child's drawing. He went to 3, maybe 4, then he relapsed. Again. The second time I almost left him for dead, I was 13. That was new. I came home to find him passed out in the tub, cold water still running over his chest. Empty bottles of whiskey, vodka, and regret littered the floor. He had thrown up on himself. There was a needle on the sink. I thought about dialing 911. My fingers hovered over the buttons. I even pressed 9 once. He was alive, but he groaned. So I turned off the faucet, sat on the floor beside him, and watched the water swirl down the drain like all the things he could have been. He told me once that I was his higher power, that when he saw me asleep on the couch with my homework scattered across my chest and my glasses slipping off my face, he remembered there was something worth crawling back from the void for. Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, because it meant if he failed again, it was my fault. By 15, I had mastered the art of the lie. I hated him for that. He's been working late. He's just tired. He's sick. Sometimes I would say he was out of town visiting family. There was no family. Not really. Just the ghosts of people who stopped calling when the debts started to collect. Teachers stopped asking. Neighbors stopped noticing. But I noticed. The third time I almost left him for dead, it was winter. Snow clung to the porch like frostbite. I found him face down in the backyard, half covered in powder. It looked like he'd fallen from the sky. Every single time. I dragged him inside, 1 inch at a time. His lips were blue. I made soup and fed him with a spoon, like he was a baby. He didn't remember any of it. I swear, Rosie, I'm done. He said he understood God best when he was sober. I never saw him pray unless he was coming down off something. He used to get this look in his eyes, wide, frantic, red-rimmed like the panic of a man drowning and seeing the light just a few feet away. Step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Okay, Dad. Okay, Dad. I mean it this time. I didn't say anything that time. I want to be someone you can be proud of. Because I had stopped believing. I dropped out of high school at 16. Not because I wasn't smart, I am, but someone had to pay the bills. Someone had to buy groceries and keep the lights on and make sure the mortgage didn't turn into an eviction notice. So I cleaned houses. 5 days a week, sometimes 6. The women I worked for never asked why a teenager showed up at 7 a.m. with bruises under her eyes and a permanent flinch in her spine. Just go, Rosie, please. You shouldn't have to see this. The 4th time I almost left him for dead, he actually asked me to. He cried for an hour. Then he passed out. I sat beside him, handed him a glass of water, and said, "Then stop making me." Step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. I found his journal one night. It wasn't hidden. just left on the kitchen table, wide open, like he wanted me to read it. There were pages of guilt, page after page of every time he slipped, every time he looked me in the eyes and lied, every time he remembered how little I used to be and how fast I had to grow. One line stuck with me. I am the storm she learned to survive. That was the first time I almost cried. Almost. But I didn't. Because someone had to be strong. The fifth time I almost left him for dead, it was Father's Day. And it was never going to be him. I bought him a card from the gas station on the corner. It said something generic like, "Thanks for always being there." I scratched the words out and wrote, "Thanks for trying." The sink had overflowed, a broken bottle lay by the stove. He'd hit his head, I think. Blood had matted in his hair like paint. I shook him, hard, slapped him, yelled his name. By the time I got home, he was on the kitchen floor. "Don't you dare, Dad. Not today. Not today." He coughed, then smiled like none of it mattered.
Hey, Rosie Bug, did you get me something?
I almost left him right there. I stood, walked to the door, hand on the knob. But I turned back. I always turn back. Step 5 admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. He chose a stranger, a sponsor named Dennis, ex-con, recovering alcoholic, 2 DUIs, 3 kids who didn't speak to him anymore. Dad said Dennis understood him. I never met the guy, but I found the letter once, folded up in an envelope, with my name written on the outside. Inside it said, "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Not dead, just lost again. But I want you to know I told him everything. All of it. And he didn't run. That gives me hope." Hope was a stupid word. By 18, I had 2 jobs and no friends. It never lasted long. No time, no energy, no room in my chest for anything that wasn't survival. I stopped talking to people unless I had to. I stopped answering questions. I stopped looking in mirrors because the girl I saw there wasn't me. She was some stranger wearing my bones like borrowed clothes. The 6th time I almost left him for dead, it was his birthday. We were supposed to go out to dinner. I bought him a new shirt from a thrift store, cleaned the house, cooked spaghetti like Mom used to, put on music. But he didn't come home. He had been sober for 3 weeks. I found him the next morning under the bridge 2 blocks down, face bruised, shirt gone, wallet stolen, smelled like whiskey and piss. I was trying, Rosie. I really was. When he saw me, he started crying before he even spoke. I helped him up, because what else was I going to do? Step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. I never knew how to answer that. He called them demons. Said he felt them sitting in his gut like anchors. Said he could hear them whispering when he tried to sleep. Told me once he was scared of the quiet, because that's when they got loud. So I just said, I know. Not really. The 7th time I almost left him for dead, I was 21. Even though I didn't, I had a place of my own by then. 1-bedroom apartment above a hardware store. Smelled like sawdust and rain. First time I ever had a space that felt like mine. He showed up at 2 a.m., drunk, barefoot, bleeding from his palm. He held it out like an offering. I didn't know where else to go. Bandaged his hand. I let him in. He asked to stay the night. Promised he wouldn't drink in my apartment. Swore it. Held up 3 fingers like a damn Boy Scout. He stayed for a week. I said okay. He never stopped drinking. Then 2. Then 3 months. Step 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Once I found one on the floor. It read, "Please let me be someone worth her forgiveness." He would sit at the kitchen table and write prayers on napkins, fold them into tiny squares and stuff them into his pockets like secret spells. I wish I could say I cried. I cried. I didn't. I just threw it away because I had stopped believing in spells too. Tried. The 8th time I almost left him for dead. He tried to kill himself. "I just wanted to hear you one more time, Rosie." He called me after taking the pills. Voice slurred. Said goodbye like he was ordering takeout. I don't remember driving there. Just remember my hands shaking on the steering wheel and the sound of my own breath like I was underwater. He was half conscious when I found him. He didn't. I slapped him, screamed, cried, held his face in my hands and begged him not to leave me. Something cracked. Not that night, but something in me did. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. My name was on it 5 times. He gave me a list once, folded into thirds, written in his shaky, slanted hand. Rosie, age 6, left her at school pickup for 4 hours. Rosie, age 9, yelled at her during her birthday party. Rosie, age 13, used rent money for liquor. He never gave it to me directly. Rosie, age 20, said she ruined my life. Rosie, age 17, missed her graduation. I found it in his sock drawer while looking for clean towels. But after that, he stopped yelling. He never said a word about it. Started saying thank you more. It wasn't enough. Stopped blaming. But it was something. And I had learned to take scraps and call them meals. Step 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. He apologized 100 times. Sometimes not. Sometimes sober. It got to where I didn't know how to answer. Do you say it's okay when it's not? Do you say I forgive you when you don't? So I said nothing. Silence became our language. Nods and sighs and glances across kitchen tables. Just the weather and groceries and what show to watch after dinner. He called it progress. We didn't talk about the past. I called it survival. And most days that was enough. The 9th time I almost left him for dead. I didn't find him. Her name was Cynthia. Lived 2 houses down. Worked night shifts at the hospital and kept odd hours like me. She called just after sunrise, voice clipped and tired. The neighbor did. I think he collapsed outside your garage. I didn't want to call 911 if he was just drunk. Figured I should ask you. I didn't even put shoes on. Ran barefoot down the sidewalk, heart punching holes in my chest. He was lying on the gravel like a discarded coat, one hand curled under his chin, the other still clutching a half-crushed cigarette. His lips moved when I shook him. He smiled like it was funny. Guess I lost again. Rosie? I didn't laugh. Step 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. He started writing lists. Every day. I'd find them on napkins. Receipts. Scraps of cardboard. Lists of what he did wrong. Lists of things to fix. Lists of what he was grateful for. Didn't drink today. Didn't yell at Rosie. Told the truth. It wasn't much, but it was more than nothing. Sometimes he'd hand them to me like offerings, like little trophies he wanted me to be proud of. I never knew what to do with them, so I kept them in a shoebox under my bed. It's still there. By 24, I was more tired than most people twice my age. Tired in the bones, in the blood. There's a fatigue that comes from grief that never ends. It's like dragging a corpse that keeps waking up. You never bury it. You just keep carrying it, and hoping this time it won't claw at you on the way. He had good days. Better weeks. Once, even a month. That night, he gave me a Polaroid. We celebrated his 1-month chip with ice cream and a walk around the lake. He held my hand like he used to when I was 5. We didn't talk much. Just listened to the wind in the trees and the ducks chasing crumbs from strangers. He wrote on the back, trying to get back to this. It was of us. From years ago. I kept it in my wallet. Still do. The 10th time I almost left him for dead, I thought I had. He disappeared for 3 days. No calls. No texts. No rumors. Nothing. And then, just like that, he came home. I filed a report. Called hospitals. Checked alleyways. Drove past the liquor stores I knew he favored. Wearing different clothes. Eyes clearer than I remembered. I didn't say anything. I went away, he said. Checked into a place. Just for a few days. Needed to hit bottom one more time. Just opened the door. I always did. Let him in. Step 11. sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. He prayed in whispers now, not the loud, begging kind, just quiet, gentle, like he was trying not to disturb the air. Sometimes I'd catch him with his eyes closed, mouth barely moving. Other times I'd hear him humming hymns under his breath, songs I hadn't heard since Mom died, songs she used to sing while cooking. He said it calmed him. He said it made the voices go quiet for a little while. I never asked what voices. I just sat with him humming too. I turned 26 in silence. No party. No cake. Just a shift at the diner and a cigarette break under the buzzing street lamp out back. When I came home, there was a note on the table. Back soon, don't wait up. I waited anyway. 3 hours later, he walked in carrying a grocery bag with a single cupcake and 2 candles stuck into it. Happy birthday, Rosie Bug. He hadn't called me that in months. He said, this is my 5th chip. We sat on the floor and ate it with plastic forks. I nodded. He placed it in my hand. I want to give it to you, because you're the reason I earned it. I didn't cry, but I wanted to. I didn't drink, he said. I just slipped, literally. Not the ER, not the psych ward, just a regular room hooked to fluids and bruised from a fall at a shelter downtown. The 11th time I almost left him for dead, he called me from the hospital. I believed him, and I hated how hard that was, because believing had always been the first step toward being broken again. Sat beside his bed and read aloud from his latest journal. He looked at me like I was the miracle, but I went to see him. Said, I can't imagine surviving this life without you. Step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Neither could I. Can you believe that? He became a sponsor. He carried someone else's pain. Sat in those meetings with a quiet strength I didn't recognize at first. He started talking about grace, not like a preacher, more like a man who had been crawling through the dark for years and finally saw the faintest glow on the horizon. He still slipped, but less. And when he did, he came back quicker, cleaned up faster. He always came back. The 12th time I almost left him for dead, he asked me to speak at a meeting. That mattered, maybe more than anything else. Just talk about what it's like, being on your side of it. I stood in front of a dozen folding chairs and men who smelled like cigarettes and apologies, and I told them the truth. That forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was a decision you made every day. That love didn't mean you forgot. Even when you wanted to run, it meant you stayed. Especially then. And they clapped. He cried, and I let him. The 13th time I almost left him for dead was the last. Not because I chose to. Because I didn't get the chance. It was early. Cold. I remember the sky being gray in that way that makes the world feel like it's been drained of all its color, like maybe God forgot to wake up. I was making coffee when the knock came. 2 officers, one in uniform, one with a badge hanging on a chain. They asked if I was Rosalie James. I nodded. They said they found him in the park. Bench. Early morning walkers. No signs of struggle. Just slumped forward like he'd fallen asleep with his hands folded in his lap. There was a chip in his coat pocket, his 12th, and a journal. They gave it to me in a clear Ziploc bag like evidence, as if I didn't already know he was gone. The funeral was small. 5 people from the meetings. 1 neighbor. No one from his past. No aunts. No cousins. No long-lost friends. I sat in the front row with shaking hands and dry eyes. Grief didn't come easy. Not the clean kind. Not the kind they write poems about. It came in gasps, in silence, in the kind of weight that presses against your spine for days before you realize it's pain. The pastor asked if I wanted to speak. I said yes. I didn't write anything down. Just held his last chip between my fingers like it might turn into something heavier. Then I opened his journal. Step 13. There is no step 13, but maybe there should be. Maybe it's the one where the people you've hurt get to breathe again. Maybe it's the one where your daughter stops wondering if today's the day she finds you cold. Maybe it's the one where you stop surviving and start living. Maybe it's the one you never get to take, but she does. Because of you, or in spite of you, or both. I read that last paragraph out loud, and my voice cracked. But I didn't cry. Not yet. I said he kept failing, but he never stopped trying. Then I flipped to the very last page. There was only one sentence there, written in ink that had smudged like it had been written through tears. I kept failing, but she never stopped giving me a reason to try. That's when I cried. Right there in front of strangers and ghosts. That's when I let it fall apart. Afterward, a man came up to me, said he was 2 years sober, said my dad saved his life, said the way he talked about me, you were his light, his reason, his hope. He was always trying to be worthy of you. And I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, said he was my reason too. Even when he wasn't, especially then, I went home and emptied his shoebox. All the lists, the napkin prayers, the scratched notes, the broken, humble attempts to be better, I put them all in a binder, labeled it steps. I carry it with me when I speak now, to kids who grew up too fast, to people loving someone in the grip of it, to the ones who still don't know if they should stay, or run, or give up. I tell them this: you don't owe anyone your brokenness, but you can love someone without losing yourself. And sometimes love is just holding the door open even when they don't walk through. I keep his last chip on my nightstand, right next to the Polaroid. Some nights, when it's quiet and the world feels like it's made of glass, I hold them both in my hand and let myself remember the boy I was forced to parent, the man I helped become something more than just an addict, the father who failed me 1,000 times, and the man who in the end tried, really tried. This story doesn't end with redemption, not the kind that fixes things, but it does end with love. Messy, complicated, ragged at the edges, real, the kind that doesn't need to be perfect to be enough. And maybe, just maybe, that's step 13. Even if it's not in the book. Grief makes you superstitious. After the funeral, I couldn't throw away the shoes I wore that day. They sat by the front door, dirt crusted in the treads, like if I moved them, I'd forget the weight of standing at the edge of his grave. I didn't wash the shirt I wore either. It smelled like rain and church wood and dust. It smelled like goodbye. For 3 weeks, I didn't speak to anyone but my manager. I didn't answer messages. I didn't return missed calls. I didn't check the mail. Because grief isn't always crying in bathtubs and writing in journals. Sometimes it's forgetting how to eat. Sometimes it's folding your father's laundry 3 weeks after he's gone, because it's the only thing you can still do for him. The apartment was too quiet. No half-muted TV humming in the background. No cough from the next room. No sound of him pacing in the kitchen when he couldn't sleep. Just silence. And silence when it's heavy is louder than any scream. I turned on the old radio. Static. Then music. Old country. Patsy Cline. He used to sing it in the kitchen. Badly. I sat on the floor, held his 5th chip, and waited to feel something that wasn't hollow. Nothing came. Grief has steps, too. No one talks about that, but it does. They're not clean, or numbered, or easy, but they exist. Step 1. You forget how to be a person. I started leaving notes for myself on the fridge. Eat something. Take a shower. Go outside. Go. Sometimes I followed them. Sometimes I didn't. But writing them felt like an act of rebellion against the nothing. And rebellion was something he would have understood. Step 2. You resent the world for moving on. People at work started smiling at me again. Small talk returned. Hey, Rosie, you see the game last night? Rosie, did you hear they're raising rent again? I nodded, said yes, said no, said whatever kept them from digging deeper. I didn't tell them I had his journal in my locker. Didn't tell them I read it during break like scripture. Didn't tell them he still spoke to me from the pages. I messed up again today. But Rosie didn't slam the door. I said something kind. She smiled. I held her hand and it felt like home. Step 3. You start to remember the good things and hate yourself for it. Like the way he laughed when I got my first waitressing tip and bought him a coffee with it. Or the time he sang to the dog during a blackout, just to keep me from crying. Or how he used to braid my hair clumsily before school when I was 7. These memories sneak in through the cracks. And you want to shut them out because they don't make sense next to the overdose kits and the court dates and the broken promises. But you let them stay. Because grief is not just pain. It's proof. Proof there was love, even if it was a wreck. Step 4. You get angry. At everything. At the way he left. At the way he tried. At the way he didn't try hard enough. At God. At the ground. At the funeral home. At yourself, most of all. Because what if you'd called that night? What if you'd gone looking earlier? What if loving him wasn't enough? You break a plate, then cry because it wasn't even his. You punch the wall, then sit on the floor and hug your knees and whisper, "I'm sorry," to no one. You write his name on your arm with a marker and fall asleep, tracing the letters. Step 5. You talk to him, not out loud, not at first, just in your head, just in the silence. I saw a cardinal today. You would have said that was Mom. I bought your brand of peanut butter. Still hate it. Still bought it. I had a dream where you came back. You were sober. You hugged me and said, "You were always enough." I cried in my sleep. Talking becomes habit. Not prayer. Not delusion. Just survival. A lifeline between two worlds. Yours, and the one he didn't make it through. I kept going to the meetings. His meetings. They let me sit in the back. No one asked why. They just nodded, passed the coffee, made room. One man, Paul, he told me we all leave people behind. You carried him a long damn way, Rosie. I didn't know what to say, so I said yeah, because the weight doesn't disappear. But sometimes someone shifts beside you and holds it for a minute, and it makes all the difference. I started writing my own journal. At first, I just copied his entries, word for word. It felt like cheating, but it also felt like breathing. Then I started writing my own. Didn't cry today. Ate a real dinner. Heard someone laugh and didn't flinch. Little trophies. Little offerings. Steps. Maybe grief isn't something you get through. Maybe it's something you carry differently, day by day. Maybe it doesn't end. But maybe, eventually, it stops breaking you. Spring came like an apology. The cold let go of the ground. Grass pushed through again. The world smelled like beginnings, and I hated it. Beginnings meant new, and I didn't feel new. I felt like a threadbare coat someone forgot to throw away. But I started walking. 10 minutes a day, then 20. I'd walk past the park bench where they found him. The first time I threw up. The second time, I sat down. By the third, I brought flowers. I didn't know why. Maybe it was stupid. But I talked to him there, out loud. Told him the sky looked like the day Mom died, that the ducks were back, that someone had spray painted the word hope on the sidewalk, and I wanted to believe it was for us. Grief step 6. You start telling the truth. To strangers. To yourself. I called my aunt, the one who hadn't spoken to Dad in 20 years. Told her he was gone. Told her I hated him sometimes. Loved him always. That I was tired of pretending it was all okay. She cried. Said I wanted to reach out. I just didn't know if I'd still be welcome. I said, we're all welcome, eventually. She sent a box of old pictures the next week. Dad, in a baseball cap, holding baby me like I was made of gold. There was one photo that stuck with me. He was 25, shirtless, covered in paint from some mural project he did while in rehab, smiling like he hadn't yet tasted the full weight of failure. I put it on the fridge, a reminder that he was once just a boy who wanted to be good. Grief, step 7. You find their voice in your own. I heard him in my laughter, in the way I cursed at traffic, in the bad jokes I made under my breath when the toaster burned my bagel. He was there, in the small things, and it didn't hurt as much. It almost made me smile. I went back to the diner full time, stopped flinching when customers asked how I was, started telling the truth, kind of. Getting through it, I'd say. Or one day at a time. People would nod, some would look down, some would touch my shoulder like they knew. Maybe they did. Pain has a way of recognizing itself in others. Like old war veterans exchanging scars, I ran into Dennis one afternoon, his old sponsor, the one Dad wrote about. He was older, slower, but still sharp, still sober. He saw me and said, "You're Rosie." I nodded. He hugged me like he meant it. Said he was proud of you. Every meeting, every time. Said you were his lighthouse. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Said I didn't always shine. Dennis looked me in the eye. You didn't have to. You just had to stay. Grief, step 8. You start imagining what they'd say if they saw you now. I pictured him sitting at the counter while I made coffee, watching me pack my lunch. He'd probably say, "You still don't toast that bread enough." Or, "That dress looks like your mother's." She'd have loved it. Sometimes I'd hear it so clearly I'd answer, "I know, Dad. I'll toast it next time." It stopped feeling crazy. Started feeling like a conversation. I opened his journal again, the final entry, the one with the smudged ink. I kept failing, but she never stopped giving me a reason to try. I underlined it, not because I needed to remember, because I needed to believe it. I started writing letters I'd never send. To him, to Mom, to the girl I was at, 6 and 16 and 20. Dear Rosie, you did everything you could. You didn't fail him. You saved him, even when it didn't look like it, even when it wasn't permanent. Love isn't about fixing people. It's about walking with them when they're broken. And you did. You still are. I folded it up, put it in the binder next to his lists. Grief, step 9. You stop waiting for the pain to go away, because it doesn't. But you learn its edges. You learn how to carry it without letting it poison your joy. You learn how to live beside it, not under it. You laugh and then feel guilty, and then let the guilt go. You let love in again, even just a little. One of the meeting guys asked me to sponsor his daughter. Said she'd been through some stuff. Said maybe I'd understand. I wasn't sure, but I said yes. She was 16, quiet, angry, smart. Her name was Lila. First time we talked, she said my dad drinks like it's a job. I said, mine used to. He tried to retire, but he kept getting called back in. She laughed, a little. We talked every week after that. Sometimes about nothing. Sometimes about everything. She said, you're like weirdly normal. I said, I fake it real good. She nodded. Me too. Lila started writing. Little things at first. Today sucked. My dad's a mess. I'm tired of pretending. I told her she didn't have to write anything profound, just real. She said I don't do feelings. I said, me neither, I just bleed them out on paper. By the 3rd week, she handed me a folded note. I want to leave, but I don't want to be the girl who gave up on her dad. I looked her in the eye. You're not. You're just the girl who's tired. She cried. Didn't even try to stop it. I took her to the park bench, where he died. I didn't tell her that at first, just said it was a good place to think. We sat in silence for a while. Then she asked, why do you come here? I told her the truth. That's where my dad took his last breath. Her face changed. Not pity, not shock, recognition. She nodded slowly, and we sat there while spring peeled itself open around us. Grief, step 10. You start helping someone else carry theirs. It doesn't fix you. It doesn't erase the ache, but it adds meaning to the mess. And like planting flowers in the ash, like whispering, "Me too," into the dark. I went through the binder again, found a list he wrote titled, "Things I Want Before I Die." It was short. See Rosie smile without sadness behind it. Make her breakfast without being hung over. Take her to the ocean. We never made it to the ocean. He tried. Once. Made it 10 miles before we had to turn back because he got sick. I said it was okay. It wasn't. But I said it anyway. I booked a weekend trip to the coast. Just me, a rental car, a motel that smelled like mildew and freedom. I brought the Polaroid, the chip, the journal. I stood on the shoreline, toes in the surf, and read aloud from his notes. Not the confessions, the hopes, the ones that ended with, "Maybe tomorrow." Then I tossed a page into the ocean. Not to forget, to let go. Grief step 11. You give yourself permission to feel joy without guilt. I got ice cream after, sat on the motel balcony and let it melt down my hand. I laughed, alone, not because anything was funny, because I was still here. And somehow that felt like a win. Lila asked if she could come to a meeting. "Not for my dad," she said, "just to see what it's like." I took her. She didn't speak, just listened. "After," she whispered. "They sound like people who've been to war." I nodded. "In a way, they have." She said, "And they're still standing." "Yeah, so are you." Sometimes I catch myself staring at doorways, waiting for him to walk through. Coffee in one hand, chip in the other, grinning like he finally got it right. I blink, and the moment is gone. But I hold on to the fact that there was a time, however brief, when he did get it right. Not perfect, but real. Grief step 12. You stop asking why. The why will crush you. Why did he start drinking again? Why did she leave? Why didn't I do more? Why didn't he call? You learn to ask better questions. What do I do with the love that's still here? How do I carry the memory without the weight? Where do I put the pieces of a life I didn't get to finish? One night I dreamed he was planting a tree. His hands were dirty. He looked young. He turned to me and said it won't grow for a while, but one day someone will sit in the shade. I woke up crying. Not broken, just human. I wrote the dream down, taped it to the fridge, and every morning since, I've read it before I step out the door. Summer came. Long, hot days that felt like both a relief and a punishment. Sunlight on skin that had grown used to the cold. Sweat on a spine that had forgotten ease. I cut my hair, not because I wanted to look different, because I needed to feel lighter. Like maybe if I took something off, I'd stop caring so much. Lila laughed when she saw it. You look like someone who's about to start a band and write songs about her exes. I grinned. Only if I get to name the band Generational Trauma. We both burst out laughing. It felt good to laugh. Not polite laughter, real from-the-belly laughter. She said, "I wish my dad would laugh like that." I didn't know what to say, so I just said, "Maybe one day." I started seeing a therapist. First session, I said, "I'm not here to cry." Second session, I cried anyway. She asked me when I last felt safe. I said, "When I was 5, for about 10 minutes on a Tuesday." She didn't flinch, didn't give me a platitude, just said, "That's still a place we can go back to, if only in pieces." Grief step 13. You accept that it's never over, and that's okay. It shows up on anniversaries, in smells, in songs, in moments when nothing is wrong and you still feel that old tug in your throat. It's the price of love. A price I'd pay again, even knowing how it ends. I took the Polaroid to a frame shop. The woman behind the counter smiled when she saw it. "Looks like love," she said. I nodded. It was. Not always, not purely, not easily, but it was love. She matted it in blue, sky blue, the color of second chances. I gave Lila a blank journal, wrote inside the front cover, "This isn't for the good days, it's for the hard ones. The days when you think you're drowning. Write it all down. Drown the page instead." She looked at me like I'd just handed her a map. Or a match. Something to light her own way. One night, I opened the binder and read the very first list. From when he started AA. Reasons to stay sober. Rosie. My teeth. That look she gives me when I remember her birthday. The way it feels to wake up and not hate myself. Rosie. He'd written my name twice, like he wanted to make sure I didn't miss it. I didn't. I passed by our old house. Windows boarded up. Grass too tall. Fence leaning like it had given up. I stood there a while, just looking, remembering the smell of spaghetti on Fridays, the way the floors creaked near the hallway. The night I found him curled up beside the washing machine, whispering apologies to no one. I left a flower on the porch, one of Mom's favorites. Then I walked away. Not out of anger, out of peace. I've learned that peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the decision to stop fighting the parts of yourself that hurt, to give them space, to listen, to say, "You don't have to be fixed to be loved." It's what I used to say to him. It's what I say to myself now. I got a tattoo, a small outline of an anchor, on my wrist, because he used to say I was his anchor. Because even though he dragged me down sometimes, even though he was the storm I had to survive, I know now, anchors aren't just what hold you down. They're what keep you from drifting away completely. I started volunteering, just a few hours a week, at the youth shelter downtown. They asked what brought me in. I said I grew up holding someone else together. They didn't ask more. Didn't need to. Sometimes pain is a language. You don't have to speak it to understand when someone else is fluent. There was a boy, maybe 12, who reminded me of him. Same restless hands, same look in the eyes like he was already halfway gone. He wouldn't talk. Just stared out the window and scratched at his sleeve. I started bringing books, reading out loud, even if he didn't ask. After 3 days, he handed me a crumpled note. "Do you think people like my dad ever come back?" I didn't lie. I said, sometimes, and sometimes they don't, but you still get to come back, even if they don't. I called my aunt again, told her I was thinking of moving. She said, "Don't run." I said, "I'm not running, I'm growing." She paused, then said, "Same thing sometimes." But she supported me. She even offered me a guest room while I figured it out. A soft place to land. I hadn't had one of those in years. Larla asked me what scared me most. I told her that I'll spend the rest of my life taking care of other people because I never learned how to let someone take care of me. She blinked like I'd said something sacred. Then she whispered, "Same." And we just sat with that truth. No fixing, no advice. Just two people who understood what it meant to grow up too soon. The binder was getting full. I added my own list. What I want before I die. To sit on a porch and not feel haunted. To love someone without waiting for them to leave. To dance without apology. To say, "I'm okay," and mean it. To forgive myself. I mailed a copy of the Polaroid to one of his old sponsors. Just a note that said, "Thank you for seeing him when the rest of the world had stopped." They wrote back, "He never stopped talking about you. Said you were the first place he ever felt safe." Safe. It landed heavy. Because I spent so long feeling like a battlefield. But maybe I was a shelter too. I went back to the ocean. This time with Lila. She'd never seen it before. We stood in silence, waves lapping at our ankles. She said, "It's louder than I thought." I said, "So was he." She took my hand. We let the tide rise and fall around us like a breath the earth had been holding. We built a fire that night, burned some of our letters, the ones written in pain and fury and confusion. She said, "What if I forget?" I said, "You won't, but you'll remember different, softer." We watched the embers float. like tiny ghosts finally letting go. Grief doesn't vanish. It evolves, becomes part of the furniture, a thing you stop bumping into as much. Sometimes you even lean on it. It teaches you the sound of your own strength and the shape of your own survival. I got another tattoo. A tiny number 13 on my shoulder blade. Not for bad luck. For the steps we don't talk about. The ones that come after the book ends. The ones that save you in the quiet. The night before I moved, I sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by boxes, holding the binder in my lap. I'd packed everything else. Books. Photos. His chip. The framed Polaroid. The ash from the fire Layla and I built. But this binder, this book of lists and letters and unfinished thoughts, it felt like the most important thing I owned. A history. A blueprint. A love story. Written in relapse and repair. I opened to the middle. A page he'd written the year before he died. Some days I think I've lost her. Other days she walks in with coffee and a sigh, and I realize she's never left. She's just tired. And I am too. But she keeps showing up, so I will too. That was the last time I ever underlined anything in his handwriting. The new city was loud and strange and beautiful. A skyline of possibility. I found a studio apartment above a flower shop. The woman downstairs reminded me of my mother. Soft voice, quick smile, always smelling like lilacs and clean soil. She asked if I'd moved for work. I said no, I moved for rest. And she understood. Didn't ask more. Just said, "You came to the right place." I took long walks. Not to escape, just to be. Every step felt like a conversation with the version of me that had never learned to rest. I started humming again, random little tunes, half-remembered songs from when Mom cooked dinner and Dad hadn't yet lost the war inside him. There was peace in it, music without sorrow, just sound for the sake of sound. Leela came to visit. She brought her journal. She was taller, older, still sarcastic but softer around the eyes. We sat on the fire escape and read to each other. Her entry said, "I used to think healing was about forgetting. Now I know it's about remembering without drowning." I told her she should write a book. She said I am. I just didn't know it until now. I hung his chip on a nail above the window. Let the sun catch it. Let the light turn it gold. Some mornings I whisper, "You made it further than they thought." Some mornings I whisper, "So did I." On the anniversary of his death, I made breakfast, just like he used to when he was sober. Burnt eggs, too much pepper, coffee so strong it could wake the dead. I set a second plate, sat across from the empty chair. I said, "You did better than anyone expected, including me." Then I ate, and smiled, and didn't cry. The meeting group asked me to speak again. New faces, new pain. Same circle of folding chairs and bitter coffee and soft, ragged hope. I stood with the binder in my hands and said, "My father died sober. That's not the whole story, but it's an ending I can live with." Then I flipped to the last page. My own words this time. I am not the storm I survived. I am the sky that cleared after. That night, I dreamed I was walking along a shoreline. He was there, not broken, not sick. Just him, younger, barefoot. He pointed at the ocean and said, "Look how far you came." I looked out and saw not water, but years, stacked like waves, crashing and receding, endless, and I stood in it all, whole. In the dream, he hugged me, said, "I never knew how to love you right, but I always did. You were the best thing I ever did." I held on to him, tight. Then I let go, and woke up. They say healing isn't linear. I don't think it's a staircase. It's a spiral. Sometimes you come back around to the same place, but a little higher, a little stronger, a little more ready to keep climbing. I'm still climbing. I think I always will be. But I'm not carrying him anymore. Not as a weight. Now, he's the wind at my back, pushing me forward. Step by step. Forever 13.